Welcome, everyone. My name is Kara Winger. I am the EOS and Parity Director of Athlete Services. We're here in another webinar for Parity professional female athletes. So happy to have you with us. Today, we're going to learn about crafting your story with Jessica Carey. If I could, just to start it off, the collaborative nature of this conversation in particular and what we hope to happen moving forward in terms of more of like a workshop vibe, interacting with each other, really making it engaging and exciting so that we actually learn. If you can share your video, we don't care what you look like. We're just happy that you're here and that you want to participate in this conversation. So it just makes everybody feel more comfortable sharing if we can see your face. So that is said. Also, you can stay on mute if you don't have something to say, but just be kind of paying attention, interactive. We really appreciate your attention. That being said, I will introduce our speaker for the day. Jessica Carey is the Program Manager for Coaching Services at the University of British Columbia, UBC. She recently relocated with her family to Vancouver, BC from Los Angeles, California. She brings over 10 years of experience in facilitating programs, workshops, and retreats for personal and professional development, with experience in shifting culture using a lens of equity, speaking to parity, inclusion, and well-being. Her experience as a lead facilitator for the Leadership Institute as Director of Speaker Curation for TEDx Pasadena fueled her passion for professional coaching as a valuable framework to foster forward progression and fulfillment. She earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from Georgia State University and is in the process of obtaining her organizational coaching certificate from UBC to deepen her skills in guiding behavior and development for teams and organizations. Thrilled to have you, Jessica. Take it away.
Thanks, Kara. That was a very extensive intro. I appreciate it. Thanks everyone for having me. I'm really excited to be with you all today. I really appreciate Parity for inviting me here. Nothing warms my heart more than supporting hardworking women. So this is the right group for me to be talking to, and really glad to be here. So as Kara said, I'm Jessica. I use pronouns she and her, and I'm calling in from Vancouver, British Columbia, where I am seated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam Native people. And I'm really grateful for their tolerance of my presence on their sacred and native land. As Kara said, I'm not originally from Vancouver. We moved here about 1.5 years ago from the Los Angeles area, and that is where I did a lot of my work with TEDx. That's where I met Lauren Gibbs, who's affectionately known as LG, I hear, in this community. And I know we're here today to talk about crafting your own stories, and we're going to talk about some of the first steps on how to do that, how to start making sense of your own personal experiences so that you can use that for public speaking opportunities. And I just want to kind of start with the fact that I recognize that public speaking is not a lot of people's favorite thing to do. I think it's listed as one of the top fears that people have. So I thought it might be nice if we start like just introducing ourselves. You already now know me, but to have you all introduce yourself to each other and to as the group, and let me know also what your experience is with public speaking, kind of how you feel about it, what you've done or haven't done, and what you would like to get out of our time together today. And I might put those questions in the chat. Your name, how about sharing your sport, what your experience is, or how you feel about public speaking. And also, what do you want to get out of our time together today? So how about if each of you unmute yourself and just go for it?
All right, I'm Emily Sweeney. I know of a few of you. So I'm on the luge team, and I've been doing luge basically my whole life. So I started when I was 10 years old. I'm 27 now. I've done a little bit of public speaking, just for nothing big time. A lot of schools and some local businesses. And it's not, I don't think it's the public speaking part that makes me nervous. I think it's just doing something that I haven't done a lot. So I don't have a fear of public speaking, but it's something that I would like to be more comfortable with. But I think out of today's webinar, what I want to get out of it is really how much we should tailor our story to a specific public, like speaking engagement, or how much we should stick to kind of what we see our story as. And I don't know, I feel like I have good material to work with my life and my story, but I don't know how to polish it.
Cool. Thanks, Emily.
I'll go next. I'm Jasmine Fenlater Victorian. I'm a two-time Olympian in bobsleigh, represented USA, and currently on Team Jamaica. I have a lot of similar things as Emily. I've done public speaking. I haven't done like a TED talk or anything at that size or intensity. Spoken to a lot of schools, businesses. I host an Airbnb online experience where I speak to people. Often it's under 5 at a time. You saw that look to my husband. The same for me. I think I have a unique story. I think I have a lot of different components that can resonate with multiple audiences. I think it's just figuring out how to curate it for curtailed audience subjects. Like, how much detail do you put in of your whole story to get to the root of why you're speaking to them, as well as how to have like a story that's just in your toolkit, I guess, where like if a speaking engagement comes up and there is no exact topic, just having that like go-to where it's whatever 20-30 minutes. I think that's pretty average of speaking to a group, that you can hit all the points necessary, being I guess the athlete that you are. I mean, most of the time the topics are what? Motivation, leadership, overcoming obstacles. So I feel like that's like a standard toolkit speech, but having that available as well, that you can have it ready and then add to it if needed.
Thanks, Jasmine. And I have a 13-year-old that I've put a sign on the door that says, "Do not bust in here," but she doesn't see it. So I might have to give a little look like you just gave to some point during this call to Jasmine. All right, who's next?
I'll go next.
Sure.
I guess so. Hi, my name's Leifa. I'm a little nervous because I didn't know I'd actually be speaking with you all, but that's exciting. So my name's Leifa. I'm a professional strong woman. And I don't know, I think that was it. Notable achievements, I've won World's Strongest Woman and Strongest Woman in the World title. So I do strength feats, really cool stuff. I think I have a really interesting story, and I think I have a lot of really interesting things to share that have crafted my abilities in sports. So the reason that people know me and the reason that people take interest in something I might have to say is because of sports, but the story outside of sports is where I think all of the gold is. So in terms of what I want to get out of this is to a little bit of what the previous two ladies also spoke about, which is that, you know, how do we identify like what those key pieces are? How do we identify what's the most interesting or the most poignant? And for me, it's like how to do it efficiently. I'm a very verbose person, and I'm very detailed and thorough. So it can be hard for me to simplify a story sometimes, which I think is probably really important. My experience with public speaking, I haven't done anything like broad or general, but I do conduct a lot of like workshops, training workshops and seminars. So I'm fairly comfortable speaking to an audience as long as I feel like I'm comfortable with the topic at hand, which when it comes to speaking about myself, I feel like I should be very comfortable. But for some reason, when it gets to that topic, it gets a little bit, you know, awkward and uncomfortable. So I'd like to learn how to smooth that out.
Great. I think that's everyone. Lauren, or do you fly on the wall, Lauren? Okay. All right.
I can jump into if you want real quick. Javelin is my sport. Kara, I have done some public speaking, but I'm similar to Leifa. Like if I am too broad, I get more nervous because I'm like, wait, what was I talking about? I kind of get all over the place because I think my message is clear, but it's usually not. And then really the nuggets is what I want to get out of today. Like, what is the gold of my story? Like, how is it maybe different than other people's?
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Thanks.
that's great. Thank you all so much. That's really helpful for me to know today, kind of know where and probably helpful for each other to hear each other's experiences and where everybody's kind of coming to this conversation. Today is going to be really kind of high level overview, really like where do we start to have a conversation with an audience that is impactful. And we're not going to get into sort of the mechanics of that, because I think that all comes really the mechanics of public speaking, like eye contact and all of those things really come later. We're going to start really with the crafting of the story. So I'm going to ask that you all bring a beginner's mindset. And so if you just don't know as much about public speaking, so you can really start from square one and build up from there and then bring in that experience. It's great that you all have some level of public speaking experience, and so you can kind of put that aside. Doesn't sound like any fears are really there. It's more about really the crafting of the story that each of you are interested in, which is really great for what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to share my screen. Have just a couple of slides as we get started. So I just thought it might be helpful to think about why this is even important, why this could be helpful. I mean, even if you don't plan to do a ton of public speaking, although it sounds like most of you do plan to do, even just going through the action of crafting your own story is really beneficial. It can create another stream of income for you as athletes. I'm sure it's important to, and for all of us, even non-athletes, to expand our career opportunities, think of other ways that we can bring in some more income and make more money. It's really good general business practice. I love, Jasmine, what you said, is sort of kind of having that go-to story that you can have, starting to think about having a little bit of what we call an elevator pitch, starting to get to know yourself well enough that, you can use that in job interviews. You can use that when you're talking to donors and sponsors, just really starting to nail in what your own skills are. And the gold that you can mine for within your story is going to be really helpful. And it's going to help sharpen those other complementary skills. I think Leifa was talking about sometimes it's difficult to be concise with our language. Doing this type of crafting our story helps with those skills too. Brevity, which is not my strong suit, saying the most important thing in the simplest way. It really helps us build that skill and just the basic skill of public speaking. And then it increases confidence, getting really good at the business of you being an expert in yourself is going to help build your confidence. So those are some of the kind of benefits, side benefits of doing this. So we're going to talk about crafting your story, but it's not just crafting a story. Everyone does have a story, but I really want to focus today on crafting your story that can have impact. Really crafting your story in a way that is going to consider what would be most meaningful for whatever audience it is that you're speaking to, because everyone does have a story. We all know that. And the key is to figure out what makes your story relevant to potential audiences. So you want to offer them something. You want to make sure that you're leaving them with a gift. So you want to design your story, your talk, your presentation, whatever it is that you're doing, in a way that's going to consider what would be most meaningful for you to leave the audience with. So it's not running down your resume or giving every minute detail of what you do on the daily. It's really about taking a step back and looking at the big picture. You want to look at all the experiences you've kind of had over your life and share the lessons that you've learned from those with other people. What I know to be true is it's often the case that we don't really see ourselves accurately. What's common to us in our everyday experience and feels really normal, it's it's the brilliance of who you are can really be missed because it just seems normal to you. I often say that a fish doesn't see that it's in water, right? Because it's just swimming around. That's just what it does. So if we can start to figure out what is really a value in your story, it's not if there's value in your story, we already know that there's value there. It's starting to chip away at your story to let the values start to shine. So that's the bigger piece of what we're going to talk about. So the first way to start is to get really curious about the theme that is running through the background of your life. The way to do this is start thinking about, like, what are you passionate about? What are your values? What gets you angry? What gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning? What are you keeping up? What's keeping you up at night, where you can't fall asleep? What do you like to read? When you have time to sit down and Google, what's the number one thing you're always Googling that you want to know more about, or that really interests you, that really lights you up? And you can start to see, and I'm not even talking about just now, think about from when you were a child all the way up, and you'll start to see some themes emerge about what you're passionate about and things that you really value. And then you want to kind of look at those things and say, all right, that's not enough just to be passionate about it. What do you also know a lot about? Where in those things that you're passionate about, do you also have some skills? Something that may even be unique to you. I know you're all athletes. You've all had experiences where you train hard. You maybe have had some hardships. You might have had losses, things to overcome. You've had successes. You've had something in your life that is unique to you. So I really recommend having a reflection process. A lot of people don't actually do this. It sounds really simple. There was a study out that said people would rather get an electrical shock than be alone with their thoughts, right? So some people, just 5 minutes, that was an actual study, they didn't want to be alone with their thoughts. So just actually having a reflection practice, you're doing more than the average person is likely doing. So just sit down, let these things start to surface, and you'll start to notice a theme. And then the next really big step is you're going to start to notice a shift. So when you think over the experiences you've had in your life, start to clarify those moments where a shift occurred, where something precipitated a change in your thinking or your behavior. There was something transformational, a moment in your life where you behaved or did something different as a result of it. And this was in the pre-work that hopefully was sent out to you. Sorry, I'm just going to move this over so I can click to the next slide. There we go. And once you've identified those shifts, you want to see then what is the impact that that new way of being that you learned from that shift, how can that benefit other people? What did you really learn as a result of that moment? Because that is truly the nugget in your story. That's like the gift that you're offering your audience. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Those are kind of the big overarching pieces. And I just kind of want to check in with everybody and see where we're at and how some of this is landing for you. Any thoughts? Kara's got a page of notes. Wow, you write fast. Go ahead, Emily.
I think what you said about what is normal to us is kind of like what's normal to me is the brilliance. That resonates a lot because, like I said, I've grown up in this Olympic space. So I don't really know what the Olympics are to someone. I don't know what the Olympics mean to someone else because I've just grown up with USA on my back. And so when Lauren did her TED talk, I read it and I watched it and I was like, man, this is so good. It's so applicable to others, but because it's so basic, I would never think of speaking on that because it feels so normal. But you're right. That's what you can take away from it. So I have a hard time seeing that in myself for sure.
Yeah, I think that's really, really common. So that's why I say just start with the premise that whatever you have to say has value. But because if you spend a lot of time thinking, is this good? Never mind, this isn't meaningful. Like just know that there's some brilliance there. So it's not an if, it's like, all right, let's start chipping away at how to say it and notice on those transformational moments because it's going to speak to somebody. Kara, were you about to say something?
Sure. Yeah. Lauren just said in the chat, I had the benefit of being a fan before I was an athlete. That's such a good point. Like different perspective than the other athletes who grew up with USA on their chest, which I'm the same as Emily. Been a javelin thrower for 20 years. So
wow,
it's a lot. But I didn't write this whole page in those 5 minutes. I did it earlier today, but it didn't take me.
Oh, some was the homework. Did everybody complete the pre-work? Get a chance to look at that? And if you didn't, it's okay.
No, I missed that.
Okay.
Was it in the email announcement?
It was in
a reminder
Instagram post, but it was easily.
It's okay.
No,
it's something we can work here together. Jasmine, were you about to say something? I saw you unmuted for a second.
Oh, I as well missed the Instagram post.
No worries. How about if I just put the question, because it's something we can do here together. I'd actually really like to take some time to kind of work through it. Basically, it was what I just said is I wanted you to focus on that aha, what I call an aha moment, that moment of that shift. I really want to focus on the shift. So if you could think of, well, the pre-work was asking you for 3 moments over the course of your life where a shift in your thinking or behavior occurred. And I'll put this in the chat, but I'm going to read it out first because my brain won't let me do both at the same time. So 3 moments over the course of your life where a shift in your thinking or behavior occurred. And then what did you learn from those shifts? And how do these moments shape who you are today? So take some time to kind of think on that, and I'm going to type them in the chat.
I'll do that for you if you want to read them again.
Oh, lovely.
So I got the first one.
3 moments over the course of your life where a shift in your thinking or behavior occurred. What did you learn from these shifts? How do these moments shape who you are today?
Cool. And here's an opportunity to sit together with our thoughts, not alone.
What's on your mind, Jasmine? I see you smiling.
No, I feel like it's a very lot of loaded questions all in one. I mean, I've thought a lot about this stuff because mainly I transitioned to a completely different country, although it was home to me. I grew up in the States, so transitioning in that aspect brought a lot of these conversations up and self-thoughts and that whole process. So it's not new to me, but it is interesting to think back again on those moments. And I feel like it's loaded in the sense of, especially as athletes, you're so used to pushing yourself and driving and I'm going to age myself, but the old school mentality of like no pain, no gain type of thing. But also the transition that's not real. And as an athlete, you have to understand like there is moments it's okay to be weak and stuff. So my mentality wants to be like, oh, they were all positive experiences, but the reality is that's not true. And most people, I believe that you talk to have the same hard time of accepting those transitions that may have not been a positive experience and still taking what made them today and etc. I'm rambling, but that's the
No,
gist.
I followed everything that you had to say, and you had a good point. These questions are, I mean, there's a lot in here. There's like 3 pretty deep questions. We could have a webinar in just each question, 3 webinars right there. And they're not designed to like, don't feel like you have to have answers now. It's designed to provoke reflection, and hopefully you can honestly take them with you today and really use it as that place to start to see those things emerge. And know that, yes, we're talking about crafting a story, but you'll see several themes come up, and those could be a couple of different talks that you can have, or presentations that you can have. So you might start to build a repertoire of like, what, if someone comes to me to speak, here's 3 things that I, feel passionate about. You might start to see that, but we'll start with 1. And I'm curious if, in the time that we have together, if anybody would like to share one shift moment with the group, just to kind of like try this out and get some feedback on that.
I'll go. So my big shift, my big moment. So I crashed at the Olympics and broke my neck and my back. And everything stopped for me in that moment. So I walked away. I could still walk. I didn't require surgery, but it really, I mean, you go from being built up for your moment at the Olympics, where you're in the best shape of your life, you're there to perform, this is your moment, and then it all came to a stop, an abrupt halt in a very short amount of time. And I like to say that I had the most spectacular crash at the Olympics as well, because it was pretty spectacular. So and then after that, I couldn't sit up for a while without everything spasming, and I couldn't do anything. Like, if anyone has had a major injury, surgery, or anything, everything shifts. That's a major shift in a lot of people. And for me, once I was cleared to start training again, it was about 6 months later to start with jogging and then work my way back into training. And I had no motivation. I got the clear go ahead, but I couldn't do it. And for me, the big learning experience in that was really the power of a dream. My whole life, since I was 7 years old, I knew that I wanted to be an Olympian, and I knew that I wanted to represent Team USA. And then I did that, and then everything stopped, and I didn't have a trajectory anymore. I didn't have anywhere that I was trying to go. And then I had a conversation with one of my coaches, and a lot of people asked me if I wanted to continue, if I ever thought of stopping. And I didn't, to be honest, it was never a question of, do I want to? It was, can my body do this again? And I had a conversation with one of my coaches, just on a walk in the woods. And I asked him if he thought I could do it. And he took the time to think about it and then said yes. And then that's what shifted, like, kind of got me back into gear again. And then I podiumed my first World Cup back, and then I podiumed at World Championships that season, like 11 months later, which is insane. I still look back at it and I'm shocked. I don't know how I did it, but it all started with that conversation with my coach. So that's my shtick.
All right, I'm hearing 2 shifts.
Mm-hmm.
The injury,
one and a positive one.
Yeah, well, just 2 moments where something was different before and after. Can you say more about the conversation with what was it that created that shift?
Yeah, I also, the way that our team statuses go, it's different with each sport, but I needed a World Cup podium that season to maintain my team status. So I was super fragile. I was very frail. And we just went for a walk because that's something I could do. And I asked him, I said, do you think I could do it this year? It seemed kind of outlandish for me to even think about that, but he genuinely took the time to think about it. And he didn't just give me a knee-jerk reaction, which was really important for me. If he had just said, yeah, of course you can do it, I wouldn't have believed him. But he thought about it. And since then, I've asked him why he said yes to me. I said, why, what made you say yes? Because if you had asked me, I would have said no. And he just said he knew what I was capable of, and he genuinely believed in me.
Mm.
He was a good coach.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the thing that he gave you? What is that?
Probably just, I couldn't believe in myself at that moment, because I was just really, I didn't know, but I was super depressed. Since then, I found that out. But in that moment, you just are just you, and you're going through the motions. But he gave me belief.
Mm. Yeah. Really good stuff. All right. So you're cooking with some grease right now. You've got something to take to, like really start to craft something around, for sure. All right. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Who has a moment they want to share with the group? The transformation moment. And it doesn't have to be a big thing like breaking your neck.
Okay. Just
Yeah,
one.
I hope you don't have that, by the way.
I'm like, that's a hard story to follow up. I'm already like, Emily, when is your TED Talk? Let's do this.
You know what's key, Lefa? Sorry, is it Lethia?
I'm Lefa.
Letha. Okay,
Yeah.
I want to say it correctly. I want to say really quickly, and then I'm going to pass the mic, is the actual transformation in Emily's story was the conversation she had with her coach. So we think it's like she was going to the Olympics and she broke her neck. It was like that mundane conversation that is what got her back to do it. So that's what I'm saying, is sometimes we think it has to be these big flashy things, but sometimes it's so really keying in on the insight and where the shift happened is how other people can see. Other people might not be able to see the breaking the neck. Like, I will, knock on wood, probably never be an Olympian where I broke my neck. You know what I mean? But I've probably been in depressed state. Certainly I have, not probably, I know I have. And to know that there's a possibility in there for, like, I can see myself in that story because of that very mundane moment. So you're showing that's an example of taking something that was extraordinary that seemed like an ordinary moment. So that's the gift you're giving to the audience there. So I just wanted to point out that sometimes we think it's got to be these big things. Okay, Lethia.
Okay, me. So just how do I choose which one, or it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, well,
Okay.
just for the purpose of this, we'll play with it.
Okay, because I think maybe an asset that I have is that when you said, okay, think of some key shifts, and those aren't just like big events, those are like times when your way of thinking actually changed. And that makes me feel great already, because I feel like I could probably write 12.
Great.
Because probably I think one of the things that's most, that's probably most interesting, or I don't want to say unique, but that I've chronicled about the story that I've had, is that like my way of thinking changed frequently. Like it was a constant adaptation. Like, okay, I think this is going to happen. Nope, now it's something different. Okay, now it's over here. So that's a quality that I think is like really characteristic of all of it for me. So hopefully that is a good sign.
Yeah.
I think in keeping with a happy tone. So one of the more recent and sort of like the most exciting ones was, so in 2017, I won the first ever women's professional Arnold World Championship.
Wow.
And this is I'm not a lifelong athlete. I didn't play sports or lift weights until college. And I started training after college and got into the sport, somewhat very quickly, but my self-image and my expectations about sport and about competing were never very high. Like I took on the challenge because I thought it was almost insurmountable. Like I wanted something really hard to do, like something, to just really challenge myself and to really have, to be able to like relish in that beginner mindset for a while and just learn and learn and learn. And then along the way, it started to reveal itself as much more than that. But like, so just for context, like all the way leading up to this, like obviously, the year or two prior, I was gaining a lot of momentum. So I had that outcome in my mind, but to really kind of look back, like this wasn't something I had prepared for my whole life. And even though I kind of saw this small sliver of opportunity, by all accounts, it was very unlikely that I would have achieved this. So it was one of those things where like, I felt like I was pulling off a big hoax. Like I felt like it was like I was just getting away with something. And I was just like, wow, this is so amazing. So when I won that championship, that was the one where it was like going into that, that was the highest goal I could possibly select. I was like, what's the most ridiculous outcome for all of this? That like, if I just, in my wildest imaginations, what could this end with? And that's what I chose. So in the moment that it became real, I was like, obviously very excited and proud and all of those things. It like broke my brain open because I was like, okay, so here's this thing that I was like, sounds like the most ridiculous, most unachievable, most absurd goal that I can think of. And I figured it out and I did it. So what else? Like, what else in my life? What else have I thought like I couldn't do or I wouldn't be capable of, or like, isn't in my skill set, that like, that's just completely false. Like, what else can I tackle now? And that was probably the most powerful shift in my thinking, because now I almost don't look at anything as like not for me. I look at as like, I don't look at things I don't even look at necessarily the idea of like, what is my skill set or what am I good at or what am I capable of? It's like, what do I choose? What do I want to be good at? And that's what I'll be good at.
I have so many goosebumps listening to you all. I'm like, I'm going to go do something too.
Yeah.
You've got it. Like that. Again, I'm seeing like 2 or 3 stories in that one story. I'm curious if I could ask you just a follow-up question. You were saying, you weren't a lifelong athlete. This is something you decided to do. I think you said after college or during college is when you kind of went into this.
Yeah, I started like training and getting into weightlifting in college, just like recreationally. But I didn't start, like I didn't even know the sport existed until like a few years after college. So I didn't train in any athletic capacity until like a year or two after.
So you said something that I'm really curious about. You said there was this moment that you decided you wanted to do something, like you wanted to do something really hard. You wanted to grind. You wanted to, do something you knew nothing about and throw yourself into it and see what was going on there?
Well, it was something that had definitely interested me, but and that one's kind of hard to explain because I think in retrospect, that is sort of just a quality of mine. Cause like, if I look at the things that I was interested in at a younger age, like it wasn't like I didn't usually develop my interest based on things I already knew. It was like, I wanted to learn something that was wildly different. I wanted to be surprised about what I was learning. I wanted to, try skills and things that were really hard, that were uncommon. So when my, interest took a direction towards strength training, that was just sort of like, looking at the landscape of what's available in those sports. I was like, well, what's the weirdest, hardest, strangest, most unique? And so that's just kind of where my attention went.
Oh, okay, great. So that's one of those themes. Like if you look over your life, we always think it's the end thing. The fact that you had this amazing title is what we see at the end, but sounds like you were this person through your whole life who was like, I'm just going to try hard things. I don't need to, I say this about Lauren. I tease her and say that, we see her TED talk and it's this great story, but really Lauren, one of the themes throughout her life is like, I'm going to jump first and figure out the details later. And it led her to that thing. And Leafy, I'm hearing a little bit of that too. Like there's this theme that I don't know if you're aware of, or it sounds like you're aware of it because you shared it with us now, over your life of just being willing to, like, I don't need to know all the details. I want to do something hard and figure it out. And so you kind of have that way of being about you, and it ended up leading you to this really cool thing. But that's not something everybody has. That's like a unique thing about you that has led you to this really great thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if that's a unique thing, does that make it more or less relevant to like a public audience?
Yeah, I think it's relevant because I don't see because it's unique, it's something you might not see as unique in you. So it might have been something that you would leave out of your story, but actually I think it's a quality like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Like I can learn that from you and then see where it took you. Like it makes me think maybe I could try that. It's not my natural way of being. But until I've seen it in you, now I'm like, okay, maybe that is possible. Just like it showed you, you're like, okay, I can do anything. I don't even need to know how to do it because now this world of possibility has opened up for you. And hearing that story opens it up for me, even though that's not like my natural way of being. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it makes it very relevant for other people. I was just pointing out that looking at themes of our life, sometimes it's those obvious things that we don't even see as relevant to our story. Thanks for sharing. Jasmine, you have a moment?
I do. So the moment I'll share is when I transitioned to Team Jamaica. I don't really discuss why I transitioned, mainly because I wanted to keep it positive for the reason why I left Team USA. But it was really, really hard for me. So I competed in the Sochi 2014 Olympics, and our team motto was like own the podium, sweep the podium. So we have 3 USA teams for the first time qualified in the history of bobsled. It was like this big thing. The 3 pilots, we all came out to bobsleigh the same time. We were roommates, we were really close. Our coaches and even the world started calling us the Wolf Pack. So it's like a lot of pressure of sweeping the podium. And my experience at the Olympics was not the best for my first Olympics. My teammate got super, super sick. We had race offs all the way to the day before actually competing. So you really didn't know who was on your sled and all this kind of drama. And I was the only one who didn't make the podium out of the 3 of us. So there was a lot of now looking back, of course, it's depression and feeling down and what's your purpose. And I grinded. I was homeless for a certain amount of months prior to the games. My mom had surgery and stuff. So I was making all these sacrifices for this big moment. And not that I don't, looking back, like appreciate it. And it's one of the best moments of my life. There was this huge deflate of failure. And I was falling out of love with the sport because of the pressures, because of the team dynamic and discrimination with the coaching staff and things like that. So I was trying to figure out, like, you put all this work in, are you going to quit now? Or is it time to transition? Are these signs? Because my biggest thing was if I wasn't having fun anymore, then that was like my cue, especially if I was healthy, that it was time to like move on. And that's from anything. So I decided to do one more season with USA, and my kind of motto, and that's actually when I met Lauren Gibbs and stuff when she first came out, her rookie season, was just have fun. Like at the end of the day, 10th place, first place, you crash, like, you know, you love bobsleigh, and take control of that and don't let anyone take that joy of the sport away from you. And if this is your last season, it doesn't matter how you finish as long as you love bobsleigh and have that positive. And that's actually where I met my husband, and he brought up to me, aren't you a dual citizen? Like, what's your purpose? You've accomplished so much in your life. Like, does it matter that you have a medal around your neck? Because I see people with medals and they're very unhappy as well. So what's your purpose? And that kind of question pushed me to realize my mission was bigger than owning the podium. And being a Black female that is mixed and can represent 2 countries, being able to showcase through trials, through discrimination, through being put in a box that like, oh, you're this type of person or this type of athlete, you should do this sport, or you come from poverty, so this is only what's your opportunity. My pivotal moment was realizing I can carry a nation, as like cliche as that sounds, but develop a team and provide that joy and happiness over a medal. Of course I want to win. I'm super competitive. I mean, me and my husband can't even play like tennis in the backyard without slamming balls. But at the end of the day, that doesn't define me. And I wanted to create something that defined me on my terms, which is that representation matters. So that's how I transitioned.
Wow. Gosh, you all have, it's really good. I love what you said about joy. It's like this different take on joy. It's like the audacity to be joyful in spite of all of that, you know, and you kind of owning that and kind of redefining that for yourself. I think that's really powerful. And then that piece about representation, what was it that you said at the end? Representation
That
matters.
representation matters, I think, especially for me. I've grown up in two worlds in a multitude of facets, being half white, half Jamaican, representing Team USA, representing Team Jamaica, like all these different things. So I think a lot of times, not to get too into like social injustices, but that's a huge topic and something that you always feel like you're a victim talking about. So I wanted to show that you can represent and have those opportunities and you don't have to be a victim. Like, why was I going to let the discrimination and the way my coaching staff was talking to me and even other things happening define my joy and what I could do? Why not show, like, I started from scratch. I went from being third in the world, winning a globe at the IBSF overall, to zero. No sled, no money, no house. I mean, we basically were sleeping in our car to build all the way up. But I wanted to show that if that's what you want, you're going to have those haters, you're going to have these obstacles, but the representation of being you, doing what you want to do, and also showing like other Black women from around the world that you don't have to like be in this box and stuck.
Yeah, really powerful. Yeah, I think all of you have like 2 or 3, it sounds like Leafia, you might even have 12 or more stories. And that is really, really a good thing. Kara, I know we only have like 10 minutes, so I want to give you an opportunity as well to maybe share your moment with everybody.
Well, I appreciate that. I like the dual role sometimes can be difficult, but I mostly still define myself as an athlete. So here we are. Something Emily said earlier spoke to me a lot, is that like we don't think our experiences are unique. And for me, injury has defined my career. And I hate that that's true, but my most recent ACL tear is just further evidence of that being the case. But my shift in this process, because it's my second career ACL tear, same knee, totally different experience because of where I am in my life, but also because of the really, I'm going to say realistic, not negative kind of mindset I had going into it. Like, this is going to be horrible because I know how horrible it was the first time. And the fact that it's not makes the shift like, how capable am I? This is really cool that I can handle this better than I could before. And I just feel like a different person going through the same process. So it's been really neat to lean on past experience in a way that I didn't expect that I was going to. Like, I thought I was just going to be able to be grittier in the terrible moments. And instead, I'm just like 12% better in every movement that I do because I've just done it before, and I'm better equipped to handle the pain, but also like celebrate the victories. So that's really my main one, but a really small, like maybe more relatable, slightly, I don't know, ubiquitous experience. I lost a meet as like a senior in high school to a girl that I like shouldn't have lost to. Like, I didn't perform and I didn't win. And I so distinctly remember my dad saying, well, it's just going to be harder from now on. Like, everyone will be better. So what are you going to do about it? And that was like one of my very first like memories of a giant shift in my perspective on the world that I think about a lot. Like, oh yeah, like other people are going to be better than me at a lot of other stuff. And it's up to me to like decide how I want to handle that.
Yeah. Both really good. There's so much to unpack with. So I think you all are definitely not having the struggle of like, if there's something there, there's definitely something there. And then I hopefully, really starting to identify, where to start, like looking at the themes of your life, looking at those moments of shift, and keying in on what you did with that shift, because what you did with that shift is what you're going to share with the audience or whomever you're talking to, so they can start to see how they could do what you've done, or what pieces of what you've learned they can take away from it. So I know you may have 2 or 3 or more, but you could apply the same process to each of those kind of aha moments. I'm going to share my screen one more time. I know we only have a few moments left together. I mean, as we're ending our time together, I just want to be able to leave you with what maybe your next steps would be. As you start to put all of these things together, and you kind of decide on one thing you're going to go with, and maybe there'll be 2, 3, whatever, but just choose one to start so that you can kind of see it all the way through to the end. In my opinion, that your presentation or story or talk, whatever you're going to do, I have found that the magic in my experience happens when these 3 elements are present. So once you kind of go through the shift and you've identified that thing and you're going to take and start forming your talk or your presentation, I keep saying talk, doesn't matter if it's a TED talk, it's just whatever you're going to do, to have these 3 elements. And that means you want to have an element of making it personal. You want to have a personal story, which you all have. But you don't want it to be too personal, right? Like you don't want it to be, you only want to pick out the nuggets of your personal story that are going to drive home your message, right? We don't need to know every mundane detail of what you do every day. And that it's better to have more information and you can whittle it down, but you do need a personal story. And then the next element is some expertise, like what gives you credibility. People want to kind of know that you know what you're talking about, and all of you have that innately in everything you all shared. The credibility is what you've done. You've kind of proven yourselves, and so I feel as an audience member listening to all those stories that there's an element of credibility. And then finally, the last element is just make sure that there's some level of impact. You're leaving them with some idea, some nugget, that gift. It's that insight that you have. And I have seen talks and stories that are missing one of these elements, like maybe there's an expert in an area and they're just talking very clinical and there's no personal story attached and it doesn't land as well. And then I've seen where it's all personal story and it's basically feels like someone's just reading their resume, but I'm like, what are you leaving me with? Like, what's the point? And it's missing that impact piece and it falls flat. So I really think over time in my experience, the things that I have seen is when you kind of hit on all 3 of these, you tend to leave with a pretty well-crafted, impactful story. So that's kind of the next steps. If you all come back and we meet again, we can kind of dive into this a little deeper and play a little bit more with this whole concept. So I want to thank you for having me here today. And thank you so much for, whoops, screen sharing has stopped. Okay, good. Thank you for sharing your stories with me and being willing to kind of play and talk in this workshop type of way, because I really think this is where those things start to emerge and you get really comfortable talking to other people, but it's also really valuable for you to support each other, and that just hearing each other's stories probably even provoked some more things within yourself. So thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of your day, I guess.
Thank you so much, Jessica. We really appreciate having you. And I, for one, I think that everyone having this personal experience on this call would really love like extra workshops, because you made it really easy to have conversation, and the really breaking down of those steps is super helpful and not something that we get to hear about very much. So you guys will get an email for feedback on this webinar. And if you want to have another workshop, please say so in that email. You'll also hear about events that we have coming up always in your inbox, but hope to have you back. Thank you, Jessica, so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.